and welcome councillors, staff and members of the gallery and the public and the press. Thank you. Okay, a couple of announcements. The public are advised that it is council policy to record the proceedings of meetings of council on digital media to assist in the preparation of the minutes and to ensure that a true and accurate account of debate and discussion of meeting is available. This audio recording is authorised by the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulations of 2015. I'd also like to make mention that that we are live streaming of the council meeting tonight. That being done, I'd like to make acknowledgement of country. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Tomajina people, and to pay our respects to those that have passed before us, their history and their culture. Record of attendance, we have a full attendance tonight, nil apologies and leave of absences previously approved, nil. Confirmation of the minutes of our previous meeting. Could I have a move and a seconder for those, please?
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Dunyam. Councillor Courtney. At this stage, any corrections to the minutes are to be identified and agreed at this point prior to taking a vote to adopt the minutes. Are there any corrections? Everyone happy with the minutes of the previous meeting? I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Declarations of interest. Does any councillor or staff member have a item on tonight's agenda they'd like to declare on? I'll take that at nil. Thank you. 4.1, announcements by the Mayor, nothing to mention. 4.2, the Mayor's communications. There is a list there that of my duties since the last regular meeting. Someone like to move that we
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, I'll second that, Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Dunyam. Councillor Bramish. Any questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Notification of council workshops. There is a recommendation there that the council note the workshops that are listed.
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Dunyam. Councillor Highland. Any questions, any discussion? I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Resp 5.1, responses to the public questions taken on notice from the previous meeting. We have nil. Public questions received in writing. 5.21, Councillor, 5.21, there's a question there and the response. 5.22, question and response. Public questions without notice. Yes, we've forgot to switch our microphones on, those of us that for when we go to speak. That's all. Thank you. No worries. Oh, just a moment. We are at the stage where we have public questions without notice, and it is my duty to read. Before calling the public questions and statements, the Council encourages community to participation in the meetings through the opportunity for public questions and statements. Consistent with Council's core values, councillors and staff strive to ensure all people are treated with courtesy, fairness, dignity and respect. We expect our residents and ratepayers to apply similar standards in their dealings with Council. As Mayor, it is my responsibility to maintain the orderly conduct of council meetings and to determine whether a question or statement is out of order due to the use of offensive, objectionable or defamatory expressions. I ask members of the public to show their consideration and courtesy in their comments. Thank you. So we now move to the public questions without notice, Mr GM. Okay, Mr Hutchison. Would you like to come forward and present your questions, please? Could I excuse you, please, Mr. Hutchison, and could you switch your microphone on, please?
I won't start again. I don't think I'm any louder. And a few other ideas around the municipality. I'll send that to councillors following this meeting. And my second part to my statement is about voluntary cooperation between councils, which was highlighted by Councillor Ken Dorsey, who is joining us tonight. So amalgamations, resource sharing and combined services between councils continue to be raised as an issue by various sectors of the community. So in Ken Dorsey's motion in their council's agenda tomorrow night, which would further explore a stronger relationship with the Burnie City Council. Pending this outcome, I believe the ball is in this council's court, and I would like to know what each councillor thinks on either of these topics before they make their decision, and what councils think the future direction of the council should be. So I request that each councillor make a short public statement at some point in tonight's meeting. And I've got a couple of questions, if I might, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Very difficult. Could you stand a little closer, Mr. Hutchison, and speak a little louder, please?
Can you hear me? All right. According to the financial report in tonight's agenda on page 98 in the capital works summary, seawall and boardwalk costs went over budget from a budgeted $500,000 to over $1 million. And the reason given was the project was over budget due to site conditions and additional foundation works required on the seawall and boardwalk. I have a couple of questions. So can council please outline more detail about those site conditions? What additional foundation works were required, and specifically where and why these weren't factored into the costs? Were the costs paid to contractors? Does this cost come out of the general budget, or does this decrease the available pool of funds received from the state and federal government for the multi-million-dollar developments along the Inglis River? And will there still be funds for further developing the Gutteridge Garden area, such as a dedicated playground space for children?
Through Mr. Mayor, if I may respond, I think given the nature of those questions, Mr. Hutchison, we'll take those on notice and provide a response to you in writing.
Thank you. And my second question is, without looking at every Tasmanian council's budget, I find it concerning that unpaid rates and charges to this council amount to approximately $500,000 ongoing at the end of each financial year or rate cycle. There seems to be limited public awareness about what's happening here. So my question in parts is, how many property owners in total are not paying their rates to council? Is it just this figure stated on page 97, which says, unfortunately, there were 44 ratepayers that were either ineligible for assistance or unwilling to work with council to enter an arrangement, therefore were lodged with TAS collections after July 1. Does this figure of between 400,000 and 650,000 actually get recovered each year, or is it waived? And how successful is TAS collections in recovering these losses according to data from earlier years?
Mr. GM, is the I'll direct those answers to Mrs. Searle. Could you address those, please?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for your question, Mr. Hutchison. The outstanding rates and charges at 30 June represents about 5.06% of the total rates and charges levied for the year. There are 194 ratepayers with outstanding rates. I do believe that number is slightly larger than that though, so I will need to provide that detail to you later. So many of those property owners own more than one property. So there would be more than 194, excuse me. Just losing my voice, sorry. So there would be more than 194 properties because there's 194 ratepayers, and some ratepayers own more than one property. So council have, so that debt varies for each ratepayer, and some of the rates and charges are outstanding for more than 1 year. But council is expected to recover all those rates and charges. So we have a broad range of powers under the Local Government Act to sell properties where they have outstanding rates and charges for 3 years or more. So council will explore all other options prior to making a decision like that. So we don't waive them each year. We just work with ratepayers and work with TAS collections to recover the rates.
Just a follow-up question. Are there any outstanding rates from greater than 3 years?
There would be some properties with greater than 3 years, which makes them eligible to sell.
Okay, so just in this example, would there be any properties that have outstanding rates of more than 5 years or more than 10 years?
I couldn't answer that question off the top of my head tonight. Sorry.
If I could have that in writing, that'd be good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Searle. Now, Mr. Dorsey, welcome to Wynyard. You've journeyed over to a beautiful city. Weather's good. I'll invite you to make your questions in public, please.
Thank you for inviting me.
We didn't invite you, you came. I'd like to have that on the record, that where that comes from.
Well, yes, and I'm very disappointed, Mr. Mayor, that you went public and advised that you didn't want to marry. I saw that in the paper, that there'll be no marriage between us.
I'm not here for a discussion on that matter, Mr. Dorsey. You're here to provide your questions and statements, and I could address your in person whenever you wish.
Okay. Thank you very much. First of all, what I want to do is table this report from KPMG. This was prepared in 2002, saying that within 5 years we would be $6 million better off if we combine councils. Now,
Just an interruption, Mr. Dorsey. We have a maximum of 3 minutes for a statement. So please continue.
Starting now? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to table these for you. Now, all I've suggested in my motion that's going to be before council tomorrow night is that we get a group of councillors from both councils to work out how we can make things work. I don't believe we can turn it over to staff. We've done that for the last 20 years, and we are no further along than what we were 20 years ago. This was, like I said, this was written 20 years ago, and we're no further along. So I would like, and really all I'm suggesting is that the mayors get together and say, let's get 3 or 4 councillors together and figure out how we can make this work. Now, a combined service between both of us benefits us both. I know that you have shared services with Circular Head. That helps you financially, but it doesn't help you. Saving money, it saves you money, but it doesn't help you. If we work together on...
Point of order, Mayor.
Yeah, what's your point?
The statement's not correct.
Okay.
Council does benefit from the resource sharing arrangement that we have with Circular Head. It does save us money, and it's incorrect to say otherwise.
I did say that...
It does save us money, and it does provide us with other services that we would not otherwise be able to afford. So please keep the statement accurate, please.
Thank you. Yep.
If you gave me a minute, Mr. Fairbrother, I would have elaborated, and you would have understand what I'm saying, is that if we have events, you benefit. If you have events, we benefit. Circular Head is a much more distant place. So if we work closer together, we both benefit. If we combine, right now we're looking at putting in a new basketball stadium. You need one, Somerset needs one, Burnie needs one. So why don't we build a really large one that suits all of us? This isn't hard. You're building a park out at Anzac Park. Why aren't we working together? We're now talking about building parks. Why aren't we working together and saying, why don't we build a good one? Why don't we do good things rather than all these little things that aren't amounting to much? This is a real opportunity. COVID has given us an opportunity, and it's time to talk. 87% in the Mercury poll said we need people to talk. Anyone with, in my opinion, most people would see that 29 councils is too many. 19 councils represent 29% of the state's population. There's one councillor for every 900 people. Now, at some point in time, that's over-representation. Now, we're all doing the same things. Why don't we have one web page that just clicks on Wynyard and Burnie? Why do we both have our own web pages that we pay X amount of money for every year? We have our own rubbish, our own trash trucks, rubbish trucks, whatever you want to call them. You guys outsource. Why don't you use ours? I mean, this is simple stuff. I mean, really, the only time we're separated, and I looked at it today, is 4 kilometers. Otherwise, we're one city. So all I'm asking, and what I'll be asking tomorrow night, is the mayors get together, we get a group of councilors together and say, how can we make this work? I don't think we can turn it over to council officers. We've done that. It doesn't work, because I don't think it's in their interest. But, so my question is, would the Wynyard Council be receptive to actually working together for the betterment of this area, rather than us concentrating on our own small areas all the time?
You want an answer to that, Mr. Dorsey?
Well, why not?
Well, we would need to workshop that and get the opinion and support of around the table.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, folks, that concludes, I guess, the public questions and statements of tonight's agenda. Planning Authority items. We don't go into planning yet until we... yeah, we do. Okay, at 6:22, we will move into the planning section of our agenda, and the public questions without no retaining the planning matters nil. Public statements regarding two planning matters are nil. 6.3, multiple dwellings at 5 Sandy Crescent Wynyard. Recommendation there, folks. Would someone like to move on that, please?
Mayor Walsh, I'll move as per the recommendation.
Councillor Fairbrother move.
I'll second it.
Councillor Highland seconded. Any speakers?
Mr Mayor, I'm quite happy to open the debate by speaking in favour of the motion. Councillors, reading through the agenda, you would notice that this is a rehash of another approval which was granted, I think it was back in 2013. Unfortunately for the developer, they let the planning application lapse before it was enacted. When they went to enact it, they found that it wasn't live. So the planning requirements require them to run the process again. What I find interesting in the application is, yes, there's been one representation, which I believe has been addressed in satisfactorily within the report. What was borne out is that council, after receiving the application, issued the applicant with a further information notice. The response was provided by the applicant, which indicated all the information was there, you just needed to read it. They didn't provide any further information, as I recall it. All they'd done was highlighted the pertinent points within the application. I have a concern, Mayor, that in the planning sphere, it seems as though we're issuing these further information requests at an alarming rate. This one was issued, and it was found that it wasn't appropriate to issue the further information request. And I'm concerned about, it's almost as though we as council seem to search through applications to try and find deficiencies so that we can issue these further information requests. This one to me was highlighted, and highlighted because one, council had previously issued a planning permit for the same application. It wasn't way back then identified that there was deficiencies within the application. It was subsequently approved, the application resubmitted, and a further information request was asked for, and that was found wanting. And I'm just thinking, surely within the system, somehow or other we need to have checks and balances in place that we don't put additional cost on the developers, such that has happened in this instance. So, Mayor, I don't have any problems with the recommendation, and ask councils to give it their consideration and support. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Fairbrother. Any further comment? Any further speakers? I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. We move over to that concludes the planning, Mr. GM. At 6:25 concludes the planning. We move on to 7.1, response to councillors' questions taken on notice from the previous meeting and their officers' responses, 7.11, 7.12, 7.13, 7.14, and we move over just a little bit slow, folks, but I'll be there in a minute. Councillors' questions received in writing. 7.2.1. There's a question there from and a response. 7.2.2. Question and a response. 7.2.3. Question and a response. 7.2.4. Question and a response. And it brings us to 7.3, councillors' questions without notice.
Excuse me, Mayor. May I ask, is there an update on the Bass Highway? As yet, there wasn't when the agenda was prepared.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we haven't received a reply from the DSG officers that we lodged the request with.
Thank you, Mr. Summers.
Is the highway's in that bad a condition that perhaps we need to follow up with another response or another way of, or another avenue, because the highway's just getting worse and worse.
So your question without notice, Mr. Councillor Bramish, would be along the lines of?
That we make contact again urgently and request an urgent answer or response.
Okay, we'll take that question on notice. Any further councillors' questions without notice? Councillor Fairbrother.
Mayor Walsh, I don't know whether you'll give me a little bit of rope for this one.
All depends, Councillor Fairbrother. We've got to stick to the rules and regs, you know.
I know, but I guess councillors was called from the floor to make a statement, and I know that questions without notice is not the time for councillors to make statements, so I'll try and frame it in the form of a question. My question without notice is, can I make the following statement, Mayor, in response to the public questions or statements that was made, that each councillor needs to give an account for him or herself in response to Councillor Dorsey's stuff that he had in the paper.
Okay.
My statement to that would be the next course of action is not for us as council, it's for the Burnie City Council to consider the motion that they have in front of them.
Tomorrow night.
I'm quite happy as a council to respond to that after they have approved Councillor Dorsey's motion, and that is yet to happen, and it's only appropriate for us to provide a response to the Burnie City Council and not to Councillor Dorsey. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yep. Any further councillors' questions without notice?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hyland.
The Woolies saga at the back of the shop, is there any further dialogue happening with that, or anything you can enlighten me on, Mr. GM? Or
The unloading
bay.
Yeah, Mr. GM or Mr. Summers, do you have any info on recently on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, fair to say things clearly haven't progressed as quickly as we would have liked. There's been a lot of dialogue, and we've made numerous requests through to Woolworths to, I guess, change their ways, for want of a better phrase. It's at the point now where we'll take more enforcement action against the planning permit that we have in place. So at this point in time, we've shown some leniency in that regard, but now we will need to progress that further through a more formal mechanism.
Thanks, Councillor Hyland. Councillor Courtney.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I was just wondering, Mr. GM, if I could get, I know that we already resource share with Burnie City Council on a number of things. I know that we already work together. I know that Mr. Summers is already working on waste management and looking at the potential to share machine. I think we're already doing a lot in that space. I just wondered if you could give me a list of what we already do for resource sharing with Bernie, because I think there's a fair bit already established there. So I'd like to know that before I respond to Mr. Dorsey.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, we can certainly provide that information to all councillors. Yeah.
Okay, any further councillors' questions without Councillor Bramish?
Thank you, thank you.
Oh, sorry, I was channel vision and I didn't see the other two.
Does the Deputy Mayor want to go first? 'Cause okay, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to probably the GM, with our assets, do we got a process we go through where they are replaced or renewed on demand, or because they've been there for so long, or what? How does that work? I guess, so you know, what I'm referring to is the tenders that was in the Advocate on Saturday regarding the steps at Boat Harbour. I guess, how does that process come about that they need renewing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, primarily renewal of assets is driven by condition. So I could talk about many examples, one being reseals where their condition deteriorates to the point where maintenance might increase beyond an acceptable level or safety might be compromised, then they would be triggered for renewal. Specifically, the stairs you refer to were picked up by Taspan, our bridge and structures contractor. They do a 6-monthly round of inspections. They'd highlighted that stairway as now showing signs of poor condition and movement and should be considered for replacement.
Thanks, Mr. Summers. Now...
when I can turn it on, I'll be able to... It's on. Is it on?
Yep. Councillor Bradley.
I just wanted to ask Daniel that those stairs, which are near our place at Boat Harbour, I have been up and down those stairs several times in the last month and a half. I can see nothing at all wrong with those stairs. The railings are sturdy, the piers are sturdy, everything's sturdy. And I happened to meet one of the builders there on Friday doing a tender for that thing. And I said to him, what do you think of the stairs? And he says, I cannot see anything wrong with these stairs. And that's what I thought, well, do we go out and check these things when their due date is up? Do we go out and have another look and say, well, yes, we think, even though that somebody saw them 6 months ago, but I can see nothing wrong with them and the builder could see nothing wrong with them. And I'm just wondering if we even postpone it for another 5 years, with our budget the way it is, we might save $5,000 at the moment and maybe in 5 years. But I think it needs to be looked at again, if you don't mind.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we can certainly do that. I guess as it stands, we've got a report from a structural engineering firm suggesting there's concerns, so that'd be the logical first step to go back and ask if they can review that. So.
Thank you, Mr. Summers. Deputy Mayor Duniam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is about the skate park in Wynyard. What are the plans for the skate park, if we could be advised? I've been contacted by some of the proprietors of businesses. They have been intimidated by behaviour, so I am unable to give any answers to those people, so I'd like to know what the plans are and whether we've got anything in the budget for this particular skate park. Thank you.
Okay, I guess we'll take that one on notice, Mr. GM. Oh, you have a reply?
I can comment on that if you like, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, thanks.
I guess if the question relates to short-term activities and behavioural aspects of the skate park, we have the police attending a workshop next Monday night in which we'll discuss with them their views on the skate park and what can be done, because ultimately it becomes an issue for the police in dealing with any antisocial behaviour in that space. So we have them coming to a workshop next Monday night. In terms of the budget, we only have some minimal funds in this year's budget around some small repair works at the skate park. And we also have some art boards to go into the skate park area as a community activation project. Longer term, the East Wynyard Foreshore Master Plan talks about possible relocation of the skate park to the East Wynyard area, but there's been no progression of that to date, and it is earmarked as an annual plan action this year to review the East Wynyard Foreshore Master Plan to determine the appetite to continue with some of those particular actions as proposed. So we'll know more about the longer term direction for the skate park at some stage later this financial year.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Could I just say something? Though I noticed we're going to be putting CCT cameras, whatever it is, in towns.
Yeah.
Is there one going to go around near the back of those shops near the skate park that might make the shop owners feel a little bit more safer if there's cameras watching them getting into their cars or whatever they do after dark?
Through Mr. Mayor, I'm just quickly looking. I have the list of the cameras here in front of me, and I'm just quickly looking down to the list to see if there's something there. There's certainly one, yes, Little Goldie Street. There is a camera that is installed and ready to go live in that particular location.
Thank you, Mr. GM. Councillor Courtney.
Yeah, just through you, Mr. Mayor, and perhaps this question will end up with you again, Daniel, sorry. In light of the comments around our coastal works, I'd just like to revisit my question about coastal erosion reports. We've seen probably in the last couple of days there's been a council copping a fair bit of flack because there's beachfront McMansions falling into the ocean. I understand common sense would have been a part there. I understand from reports council knocked it back and lawyers overrid them. I'm just bringing back to the table that we know we're operating off a coastal erosion report that's from 2012. I know that we're looking at updating the planning scheme at a state level. I think it's folly for us not to push for the most up-to-date coastal erosion reports so that when we're saying yes to infrastructure, council infrastructure, subdivisions, building, we are working on the most up-to-date coastal erosion reports, and I think that's highlighted by what's been in the media this week. So if we could go back and see the report that perhaps is sitting in state government could be entered as a public document, and we could link our planning decisions to a relevant coastal erosion report, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Do we wish to respond to Councillor Courtney's?
Thanks. Thanks, through Mr. Mayor. I'll give some replies there. Look, certainly for our own asset planning, we can absolutely use the most up-to-date information, and that would be the sensible thing to do to make good decisions on behalf of the community. The new planning scheme, as Councillor Courtney has referenced, will introduce a coastal hazards code. The sticking point being that the code itself may reference older data, so the legislation in effect lags the most up-to-date understanding of coastal erosion predictions. It may be through ISEP or through other advocacy roles of council that we can push that code does reference the most up-to-date information available, so that, as Councillor Courtney had put, decisions are made on the most up-to-date information. So.
Thanks, Mr. Summers. Any further councillors' questions without notice? Councillor Fairbrother.
Mayor, yeah, I've got a question. What stage is the $7,500 business plan for the loo with view at Table Cape?
Through Mr. Mayor, I'd say it has not progressed anything further, has not started.
Subsequent to that question, I asked another question in relation to the loo with view. Is there any purpose of spending $7,500 on a business case if the majority of councillors aren't supportive of the project?
Through Mr. Mayor, if the majority of councillors were not supportive of the project and voted against proceeding with the feasibility plan, we would not proceed with it. But as the vote was to proceed with the feasibility study, that is the direction the officers have, and so therefore that particular study will proceed in accordance with the resolution of council.
Thank you, Mr. GM.
Thank you for your response, Mr. General Manager. Can I flag that now we have 8 councillors around the table? Last council meeting we had 7. Mayor Walsh, I know that in the past as council we have promoted a team approach to the way we do business. It would be good for me and perhaps us, for all of us, united as a team, moved forward on our capital projects. I think the item needs to be reconsidered to incorporate Councillor Bradley's views in the manner in which we proceed forward with this particular project, as there's not much point, in my view, of spending $7,500 and we get to sit as a new council and we don't have majority support for the project, and we've wasted $7,500 of ratepayers' funds. So, Mayor, could I foreshadow that the motion be re-put for the loo to the view to incorporate Councillor Bradley's views? Thank you.
Thank you. I understand that we have a current decision on the books. I guess that you'd need to agendarise that for the next meeting, Councillor Fairbrother.
Okay, well, I so will foreshadow such a motion, Mayor.
Okay, so you'll go through those procedures in having it on August agenda.
Correct, thank you.
Any further councillors with questions without notice?
I just got a comment to Councillor Fairbrother's proposal that can we get an exact costing of what it's going to cost to maintain it, depreciation, or the exact cost of everything as well, if as close as you can get.
That was the proposal that was passed at the last meeting.
Yeah, but we didn't have the exact costs or anything in front of us.
No.
We guessed them from prior back, but can we get the exact at the next meeting?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that was the intent of the study, to give you the precise details around what the future costs and construction costs would be, also the benefits of the project, both the economic benefits and tourism-related benefits. So all of those items that you refer to there, Councillor Bramage, were going to be considered in the report that was to be provided.
When the Lou with the View first came to the table, was given them costs then of what it was going to cost to maintain it and clean it. I thought, I'm pretty confident we was. Maybe if the costs are reasonable, I might change my mind. But if they're unknown, well, I probably can't change my mind. I guess you might know where I'm coming from.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly there were figures quoted in the initial report, and a concept was put before council as part of that broad concept. Some preliminary estimates were given. So you're correct in what you're saying, that there were certainly some preliminary figures proposed based on the broad concept.
Okay, any further councillors' questions without notice? Councillor Fairbrother.
Mayor, my next question is directed to the General Manager. I understand on the 27th of May some correspondence was sent directly to the General Manager from a resident at 51 Dodgen Street. That was sent on the 27th of May. The ratepayer made contact with me, I believe, post-June. The ratepayer actually brought the correspondence in on the 22nd of June, which was the morning of the last council meeting. I was just wondering, has that correspondence been responded to? Does he know offhand?
Mr. GM.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, look, I don't know offhand, and nothing rings a bell around 51 Dodgen Street. Not all correspondence necessarily addressed to the General Manager goes directly to the General Manager. It's often passed to the most relevant officer to address. But I'm happy to have a look at that, Councillor Fairbrother, and determine whether or not a reply has been provided.
Yes, if one hasn't been provided, could one be provided to him?
If one hasn't been provided by now, I suggest, we need to get onto that very quickly.
Thank you. Another question, if I might.
Councillor Fairbrother.
Would council staff be able to advise councillors what constitutes a minor boundary adjustment?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I might have to take that one on notice for one of our planning staff to provide an answer to that one.
Yep. Thank you, Mr Summers.
Thank you. Another question, if I may. Could councillors be provided with a copy of the old coastal village zone at Boat Harbour Beach, please? The reason for the question is we have a developer down there who's got some rural resource zone land. I lived at 169 Port Road, Boat Harbour. I had some coastal village zone land. It was changed to a rural resource, and persistent nagging by me had it changed back to rural living. I suspect that this person's rural resource zone land was once coastal village and should have been rezoned back to low density residential or rural residential as a minimum. He's going through trying to subdivide a piece of his rural resource land, and he's meeting some fairly high hurdles, and all it is the land is staying exactly the same. The only thing that's changing is the boundary, and I guess to me it should be classed as a minor boundary adjustment. However, he's running into the headwinds of town planning, and I guess I'm trying to give him some assistance in finding a pathway through the mire, which I would have thought and hoped that he would have got from the planning staff. So for whatever we could do to give him a hand, please can we do whatever we can to get him a little bit further down the track. Thank you.
Okay, I guess we'll need those details to the staff, Mr GM, and we'll go from there. Okay, thank you. Any further councillors' questions without notice? Councillor Deputy Mayor Dunyam.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I understand that each of us received an email from Helmut, and I can't remember his surname, from Waratah, and I just wondered if any response had been provided to that gentleman on the issues that he raised, and I'm wondering if we were going to be discussing those issues at a discussion meeting, not a formal meeting, at some stage, please.
Mr GM, can you or any staff member help us there in that regard?
Through Mr Mayor, I can't because I'm not sure, but we will certainly follow that up and let councillors know.
Thank you. We going again, Councillor Fairbrother?
Unless somebody else has got one, yeah, I'll have a crack. Mayor, my question is in response to the question that I put in writing in regards to 7.21. Can councillors be furnished with a copy of both legal advice in response to that question, and that provided to councillors before the next formal council meeting?
For what purpose, Councillor Fairbrother?
Well, the purpose is it appears as though the first lot of legal advice that we got was in error. I'm thinking, wow, we're getting legal advice is not accurate. I thought, well, I'd like to have a look at that. And the second one is quite clearly we got legal advice that was contrary to the first. So I'm just sort of thinking, I'm left scratching my head as to, well, what's going on? So yeah, I guess furnishing the legal advice will identify, it will be in keeping with council's values, which one of is transparency. That's all. Thank you. You noted that one, Mr GM?
I've noted that.
Okay. Okay, any further councillors' questions without notice? You going again, Councillor Fairbrother?
I think just one more, Mayor.
You're on.
My question is, how many properties and property owners in the municipality will have their building rights removed with the directly or indirectly, have their building rights removed with the introduction of the new Tasmanian planning scheme? Not sure whether we got that. Do you want me to do it again?
Now, we clear?
Yep, thank you.
You'll need to have a reply later on with the research there, Mr. GM, won't you? Yep. Okay. Any further councillors' questions? Without notice?
Can I do one more?
Yeah.
I just wanted an update on the Forsters with an S and an R, Forsters Road renaming. It's Forsters Road at the moment. Council staff are onto it. I'm just wondering where things are at.
Mr. G, which way do we go for that? We need to...
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, we'll need to take that one on notice and come back to you, Councillor Fairbrother.
Thank you.
Foster's Road renaming. Okay. No more lights on? We're done. Okay, thanks councillors for your input into those. We move over the page to 8.1, notices of motion. No, Councillor Fairbrother has a notice there he's documented, and you wish to formally move that motion, Councillor Fairbrother?
As per the recommendation, Mayor.
I'll second that, Mr Mayor.
Okay. I'll open it for debate. Any speakers? Councillor Fairbrother, you'd like to launch?
I will, Mayor. I'll firstly like to say that I think it's good for council when we adopt a policy to have a decent review at some stage post adoption. For me, the adoption of the new waste disposal facility has been a good course of action for council to take to try and address some inequities within the system. They were perceived to be where we had some tenants who lived in the municipality that weren't getting tip tickets. It provided a degree of equity to those people that didn't receive the tip tickets. But what I think we've done, there has been some unintended consequences, I believe, for the introduction of the new policy, and that is under the old tip ticket system, we disenfranchised the renters. Under the new system, I think that we're disenfranchising a number of classes of people. Pensioners, the elderly and the like are being disadvantaged because when they went and employed a contractor, they often used to pay the contractor in tip tickets. Now they don't have that avenue, so they have to pay the contractor for cutting their grass, and then they also have to then add some monetary value to cover their costs of coming into the waste transfer station. And whilst that might be okay for the contractor to just pass the cost on, it's having an indirect impost on those people that have been accustomed to using their tip tickets as a form of collateral to pay for a service. There are also those within the municipality that may have 4 or 5 trucks, 4 or 5 properties and pay $400 or $500 in waste transfer station fees. And those people may have a light truck which they take their rubbish to the tip, and they're getting no value from their waste fees that they pay. So I guess this review is about trying to find a better situation than where we're at. It might mean that maybe the old tip ticket system was the best system there was about. And I'm quite happy to put up my hand and say, hey, let's try and find the best and the most equitable system that there is about, and it may even mean for us to perhaps going back to the old system. I don't know. But I think that we need to tweak the current system to try and make it a little bit more equitable than what we've currently got.
Any further speakers?
Mr.
Councillor
Mayor.
Courtney, would you like to switch that mic off on the end for me, please? Don't worry, send the invoice in. Okay, Councillor Hyland.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment to that motion if I could.
Okay, the amendment reads,
After the word review, I just want to add in there July 2021 for the review. And if I can get a seconder, I'll just... Thanks, Councillor
Okay.
Bradley. I would imagine councillors would have worked out that the current cost structure's been in action for about 13 days so far, and I think that we should actually give it a good run so that we tease out all the issues so that when the review is done, we can fix all the anomalies. And I'm not sure whether that was the intent of the mover of the original motion, but or whether he wants to have a go at it all the way through and try and fix it on the run. But I believe we should have a look at it in 12 months' time and do a thorough review of the whole process and go on from there.
okay. Any further speakers regarding the amendment? Councillor Fairbrother.
Mayor, if I could provide some clarification perhaps to the intent of the motion, as well as speak against the amendment.
Discussion regarding the motion is suspended while there's an amendment on the books, Councillor Fairbrother. So
As-
you have to
as I
stick
was-
with the amendment.
Okay, I'm sure it'll have the same purpose.
That's up to
I
you.
speak against the amendment. The addition of the July 2021 provides 12 months worth of inequity that we will be labouring through to the rest of the community with those people that already after 13 days feel disenfranchised with the new process. To me, that's excessively too long. I think that I pride myself on being a responsive council. I'm already getting feedback, negative feedback on the new policy. So I think it's prudent for council to get on to this sooner rather than July 2021. So I don't support the motion.
Thank you. Any further speakers regarding the amendment? Councillor Courtney.
I've got a question through you, Mr Mayor.
Question, Councillor Courtney.
Mr Summers, are we doing a waste management review?
Through you, Mr Mayor, we have a waste strategy in place. So, look, there'll be additional workshops throughout the year for different items as part of that strategy. You'll recall recently we undertook a survey. Some of those questions around the survey were around community attitudes towards FOGO services and the like, so there'll be multiple, workshopping opportunities around waste matters as a whole. So,
And were we to do a review soon on the feedback that's come back? Like, have you got a date or a month?
Look, notionally, we thought within the first couple of months we would hear feedback.
Yeah.
We were probably upfront that we would have a conversation at some point early on in the year to see how it's going. So, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr Summers. Any further speakers regarding the amendment or questions? Councillor Edwards.
I won't support that motion, but we can review it in 2021 at the end. But I'm like Councillor Fairbrother, I've had a lot of feedback from people going to the waste transfer station and in a negative way, so where they're actually missing out from when they've been going to the tip and using other people's tip tickets. So I can see it's very disheartening for them to tell little old ladies that they all have to pay or they haven't got the tip tickets to pass on to them. That's them doing a service to these older people in our town.
Okay. Any further speakers regarding the amendment? Okay. Do you wish to close the debate on the amendment, Councillor Okay, I'll put the amendment to the vote and there will be a division, and I'll ask those to indicate who is for the amendment. Councillor Hyland, Councillor Bradley. Those against? Councillor Fairbrother, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Courtney, Councillor Bramish, Deputy Mayor Dunyam, and myself. The amendment is lost. We now revert back to the notice of motion that's on the books, moved by Councillor Fairbrother and seconded Deputy Mayor Dunyam. We'll continue those speakers for that before we ask to close. Any further speakers in regarding to 8.1, the review of the new waste disposal facility costs? Any more speakers?
Through you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Courtney.
Have we got a suggested time that you want to put on it, Councillor Fairbrother? Because obviously we can't leave it open-ended. So do you have a time period or that you feel that we'd be able to get a good sort of idea of what the feedback is?
Mayor, if I may respond to that question. Given the nature of the feedback, I don't know whether I'm only receiving it, but to me it's like the noise is already starting to be deafening, so the sooner the better for me, because if it's ongoing, it's only going to get bigger than Ben-Hur, and like COVID-19, we need to ring it, get onto it, and provide something that is a little bit more palatable than it's spreading like COVID-19. So the sooner the better.
Okay.
But again, it's perhaps an operational type issue. If council sets the policy, then it's an operational one for council staff to put it on the agenda and deal with. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Any further speakers in regarding to the notice of motion? Councillor Bramish.
Thanks, Mayor. I guess through you, Mr Mayor, to whoever, I guess if the contractors like the Sparrow Webbers, the Jim's Mowing and them sort of people was given free access to the tip to dispose of their lawn clippings and shrubbery or whatever they might get from a household, the problem would be solved. Yeah, how I see it. Am I right or wrong? I guess the builder's waste, the commercial waste, which everyone's got to pay something for, if they take some steel or tin or wood out of someone's yard, I got to pay for that if I take it to the tip. So, you know, I guess the problem's solved if them people are free access. Is that correct?
You need to point that question at Councillor Fairbrother with the information he has regarding his motion.
Yeah, if I can, with the feedback he's getting, do you think that would be solve the problem?
In response to your question, Councillor Bramage, I'd suggest that perhaps that is one option. Council staff quite often come up with, well, I didn't see that one coming. Quite often welcome suggestions. We have an engineer there that his bread and butter is the waste management area. Perhaps to look to him and some of his staff for what's best practice in the area, given what we as councillors, we set the policy, they provide the delivery through the operation. So yes, that is one suggestion. There might be other suggestions around the council table. Perhaps we take it to a workshop, throw the idea about. I did make some inquiries today. We have about 600,000 and 700,000 properties within this municipality that are all charged $100,000. The operational costs are around $800,000. So there is an imbalance there of about $100,000, just to use rough, crude figures, that perhaps we need to find to be able to provide free access to everybody, if that's the will of the council. We need to consider this policy. Once we set the policy, how it's processed from there is in the General Manager's domain. So yeah, if you're suggesting that perhaps we have a workshop around it, throw the idea around, get some more feedback. I'm sure that the publicity that the lady from the Advocate or the media might give us on this particular one may provide us with a bit more feedback from ratepayers as to what they think about the policy, if you haven't been receiving some, and the new fee structure. So we'll see how it goes.
Okay, answered your question, Councillor Bramish. Any further speakers? Councillor Edwards.
We just know that when we brought this out, that we knew there would be some tweaking that we would have to do. So we just want to sort of squash it beforehand and try and workshop and come up with some better working strategies for people in our community.
Okay, any further speakers regarding the notice of motion? You wish to... No one's spoken against it, I guess, Councillor Fairbrother. So I'll put the motion. Okay, I'll record the vote. Those in favour, please indicate. Against? Passed unanimously. Okay, 8.2, the Sisters Beach access. There's a notice of motion there from Councillor Fairbrother. The council undertake an investigation into identifying a preferred secondary access to Sisters Beach. You'd like to formally move that motion, Councillor Fairbrother?
Yeah, moved as per the stated motion, thank you.
I'll second that, Mr Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Daniam seconded. You'd like to open the debate, Councillor Fairbrother?
Thank you, Mayor Walsh. Councillors, I guess if we have all had our ear to the ground over time, this particular motion has often been talked about, but I was asked the question today, why haven't you put it forward before? And it's sort of one of those things that, yeah, okay, we've talked about it, but maybe it's been in the too hard basket. And perhaps different times that we live in calls for a different response to the way we do things. And I guess Councillor House's departure perhaps gave me a bit of a jolt into, well, maybe sit up and take notice, I suppose. Well, what am I at council for? And I guess out of that, I've come up with these motions tonight. And I guess this one is one that's been talked about for some time, well before any development applications that have come before council, especially from a safety front. Councillor Bradley, being a member of the Sisters Beach Fire Brigade, or I'm not sure whether she still is now that she's a Boat Harbour Beach resident, a member of the Sisters Beach Fire Brigade, but she'll recall, I think was it 2009, a fire come through from Rocky Cape, and there was one road in and one road out. And I guess what this motion does is flag that perhaps as a council we need to undertake an investigation into other options. And as I said to somebody today, whilst Sisters Beach is surrounded by a national park, access from Circular Head has been a long-standing one. It was only over the weekend I found a copy of Henry Hellier's expeditions and his early drawings of the northwest coast. And I guess later it was called the Postman's Track, but there was a defined route from Burnie through to the VDL home at Circular Head that went through the Sisters Beach and the Sisters Hills area. And I'm sure the Aboriginal heritage of the area, the Aboriginal people used or traversed the hills of Sisters Beach for their access. And there is currently a number of fire trails. White's Road, for example, comes through. You can walk through to Sisters Beach already. And I'm sure that if we consult with some of the locals, I'm sure they'll be able to give us other ideas on other avenues which might be able to be utilised, as we've done at Sisters Beach, to come up with an alternative access, albeit it may even be just for emergencies. But there will be a considerable amount of consultation that we need to do with state government agencies if council's of the mind to approve this particular motion. So I've flagged it as a project for 21-22, and perhaps when we review our budget later on we may find some dollars to undertake some investigations for identification of a preferred second access to Sisters Beach.
Councillor Courtney.
I'm just going to say that I'm in support of that, given that we are now getting more applications for subdivisions at Sisters Beach, and we're going to be investing a lot more in the community at Sisters Beach, I think that's probably poignant timing for that to be done. So that's a good motion.
Deputy Mayor Daniel.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree. It is a good motion. It is about time. We are no longer property owners down there, but we have been through quite a few fires. Lucky to survive, I think, at times, and certainly it is quite frightening knowing that there is only one way out of that area when there is a fire. So I commend the motion. I do think it's about time that we found an alternative route, a secondary route that will provide a safe exit for people. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bramish.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I have a lolly stuck in my teeth. Yeah. Now, from White's Road halfway up the Sisters Hills to Sisters Beach is a straight line. It's not very far. And I could drive through there now in my tractor. So it wouldn't take a lot to probably make an access to it. So I reckon a brilliant idea. Thank you.
Okay, any further speakers?
Yeah, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Hyland.
Yeah, look, I certainly support the motion, but I would prefer if it was pushed out to the 21-22 budget. I think it's sort of, obviously we can do a little bit of exploratory work, but I think what councillors need to keep in mind that big red square we've got on the end of our this year's budget, and we keep sort of adding a few of these little, we're only into the first month into the new financial year, and if we keep adding in these little jobs, and I think it should be reminded, given what's going on in Victoria and now New South Wales, we may end up with another wave of this damn virus. Hope the hell we don't, but, and this council may at some stage be called on to support our businesses and whatever for another round. You know, we just don't know in the future, and I just wouldn't like to see us continue to add on these little jobs where we can, particularly this one, push it back into that next financial year. That's all. But certainly support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hyland. Any further speakers?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Yeah. Councillor Bradley.
I do support the motion as well, Mr Mayor. It must be at least, I don't know, 12 years or more since the fire went through there last time. And each year the vegetation is building up on the floor of the bush, and Sisters Beach is very vulnerable, and it will be vulnerable again this summer. And I think the sooner we get on to this finding a track through, there are tracks through that only Parks and Fire Service know about, but you can get through to Dunniam's paddocks over that way. So you can get through there, and it's quite an easy track, but you need a four-wheel drive. So, but I think we need to do it sooner, maybe at the end of when we get money.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bradley. Any further speakers?
Can I just make a note? This says that to go ahead with this in the range of 15,000. So we know that the bushfires are becoming worse. If we're going to say that, no, we're not going to do it because we don't, want to blow all our spending, $7,500 for a toilet for tourists when we can't have tourists because there's no flights, $15,000 for Sisters Beach access in a bushfire. I think if we're going to say we're not going to do some things on cost, perhaps we should look at our priorities.
Any further speakers? No further speakers? No one spoken again. Councillor Hyland, your light was on.
Oh, sorry, I
That's
didn't
all
turn
right.
it off before.
No, that's all right. I just thought you might have had something to question. There's been no one spoken against the motion, so I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried unanimously. Okay, we move on to 8.3. Okay, notice of motion there. Replacement of public toilet. It's read in 1 and 2 there. Would you like to formally move that motion, Councillor Fairbrother?
No, Mr Mayor, I only wish to move on part 1.
Okay.
If I could perhaps put my toe in the water and move on that, find what the will of the council is, perhaps, we may then consider the second part as a subsequent motion. But I think to move motion 1, that as a part of the 2021-22 budget, consider replacement of the public toilets in the Woolworths car park.
Okay, you're moving on that. Part 1 of 8.3. A motion moved by Councillor Fairbrother. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second the motion.
Councillor Courtney. Please proceed, Councillor Fairbrother.
Thanks, Mayor. The benefit of putting forward this motion is to find out that we need to put up with the current toilets there for another 35 years. That to me is like, I was glad that I put the motion forward just to find that out. And I think the community will be over the moon to find out that they need to put up with those toilets. If this motion's not passed, that we'll have those toilets in that condition for the next 35 years. That pretty much blew me away. I thought, really? I didn't know that, but thank you for the information. I guess as a councillor, these toilets to me are perhaps, I'd classify as the bane of my existence as a councillor. I don't know how many times or how much feedback I seem to get on the comments or adverse comments that I seem to get around this toilet facilities. And as the motion there states, I believe that they would be the most publicly utilised conveniences in the municipality. And I believe that our ratepayers deserve a higher standard of public amenities in the Central Wynyard Business District. And yes, we are constructing some new toilets down the lower end of the street, but when nature calls, I don't know that you can run that far. There is a growing appetite for some of our residents to whisk across to the wonders of Wynyard, and I'm told that if somebody rings up to complain about the toilets, they're even promoted as a location to go and do your business by council staff. And I don't find that as a method that is acceptable. And I think that I come up with this motion to put it out there to see what everybody's feelings are about whether they thought or whether they get similar feedback to me, and whether they think that the ratepayers of Waratah-Wynyard Municipality are more deserving of the public toilet facilities than what we currently provide them. So I put the motion out there as a bit of a test to see what the remainder of you think about the standard of the public toilets that we provide the ratepayers. So I'll be interested to listen to the feedback. Thank you.
Any further speakers?
Got a question, Mr Mayor.
Question for Councillor Highland.
I'm not too bad on figures, Mr Mayor, but just browsing through this lot, and we're talking about wasting money and saving money. 35 years remaining in the life of that toilet, and I think it reads down there a little bit further. If we to dispose of that existing building at this time, we would actually lose about $100,000. Would that be somewhere near the mark or close to? Yeah, could you give us a bit of a outline on what that's all about, Mr GM?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, the estimated replacement cost of $225,000 is stated there, a life of 50 years. If disposed of at its current age or prior to the next financial year, would result in a book loss on disposal of $150,000. So.
Thank you, Mr Summers. Any further speakers regarding part 1 of 8.3?
Mr Mayor, I can't see anything wrong with those toilets. The only thing they really need is a good clean. And how do you keep any toilets clean? Even if the ones down there, they're brand new, we're not guaranteed that those toilets are going to stay clean. And in 10 years' time, people say, oh, we don't like those toilets either. I think we need to look at something that we can clean them regularly. And but there's nothing wrong with the structure of them. There's a toilet, there's a toilet paper, whatever else you need there, a sink. I don't see anything wrong with them unless just have to clean them more often.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Edwards?
I'm just wondering, like, because the toilets are cleaned daily, aren't they usually? Yeah. I'm just wondering what procedures are used. Like, is it a hot steam clean, like once a week, once a month, or is it just like a bit of a mop and a wipe over sort of thing? So I was just wondering with the contractors if we could know what that procedure is and to what standard is their cleaning to?
Mr Summers, do you need to take that on notice to get that information?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I can probably bring that to a workshop. A couple of years back and prior to the letting out of the current contract, we did a bit of an audit of the cleaning task there. We found that even with regular cleaning, at times they could become filthy depending upon the use quite quickly. It might be useful to go through some of that, as we found, as well as looking at options to improve the standard of public toilet, whichever they may land on. So.
Thank you. Councillor Courtney?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, that's what I was going to suggest. Like a rebuild probably for me is a tad too far, but that's what I was going to ask Mr Summers, whether we could look at sort of renovating, upgrading and how we clean them rather than a full rebuild.
Thank you. Any further speakers?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'll speak against it at this stage.
Councillor Hyland?
Yep. And for that very reason, you just, we haven't got that sort of money just to burn, and I think, agreeing with Councillor Courtney, I think a bit of an upgrade and even an extra clean during the day obviously would alleviate any other issues. So.
Councillor, someone else? Deputy Mayor Dunya.
Yep, thank you, Mr Mayor. I do think that the toilets do need looking at in terms of cleanliness, etc., and I would prefer the upgrade. I've spoken with Mr Summers about this several times, and I've said to him I wouldn't even use those toilets myself because sometimes they are pretty disgusting. However, I was going to ask the same question as Councillor Courtney. What's the option in regard to upgrades and that sort of thing? So that would be my preferred option. Thank you.
Yep, okay. Councillor Bramish.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I can't support the motion, but I can see where Councillor Fairbrother's coming from. We've got to get more life out of our toilet blocks than what we're getting if we're going to pull them down now and rebuild. Yes, look, and I tell you what, I think we'd all use them if we had to. I go in there reasonably often because the older you get, the more you got to go. But, they don't need a lot doing to them. A coat of paint, look at that toilet block out near Kimmy's old shop. It's $1 million it looks. How long do you think that's going to get before that gets dirty inside? Not long. Exactly. All we need is to put a coat of paint on it, a leery, bright colour, something that stands out. We could have a loo with a view in a car park. So, I don't think we should do anything to them. Just tidy them up and try and keep them as best we can.
Any further speakers? I'd just like to make a comment. Our staff attended to the Somerset Cam River toilets there with a renovation and done a great job of them. They come up really good, and I often swing around there, and I think a renovation would suffice to bring them up to standard without a lot of expense. That's just my opinion. I don't speak very often, but that's, I think, a better way of doing it. Any further speakers?
Yes, Mr Mayor, could I just say one more thing? The toilets in Europe, you have to be very brave to go in there because they're on a time limit. And when you do your business, you have to get out really quick because the showers come on and it's all washed out after each person, these showers come on and just washes everything. And if you get stuck in there, too bad. But I think that's a good idea if we had something like that where after each person, the showers come on, cleans everything, ready for the next person. I don't know how much that'd cost, but it sounds good. And it was.
I think you better
wasn't
bring
so-
that to my ISEP plan. That's not good use of water.
Mr Mayor, I think that Councillor Bradley's forgotten that they play music as well while they shower you.
Tom T all died. No worries. Anyone, any further speakers in regarding to this notice of motion? Councillor Fairbrother, I guess they're all done and dusted. Would you like to close the debate?
Thank you, Mayor. The motion does indicate that, next year's budget, but 34 years is 1 year less than 35. So given that councillors are talking about sort of the main themes coming through, wasting and saving money, I thought one of our council values is trying to get best bang for dollar for the ratepayers as we can. If my car was broken down and I wasn't able to get from point A to point B, if I didn't have the money, would I still buy a new car? That's the analogy I use for this toilet. I think one of the themes come through was that they're absolutely disgusting. Well, they are. That's why. And we'll look at spending X amount of dollars for a toilet up on Table Cape for the tourists, but what are we doing for our ratepayers? That's what it comes back to. We all acknowledge that we don't use them because they're bloody disgusting. Councillor Bramage says he'll only use it if he really has to. Well, the other elderly people within our municipality have no option either. They can't run down the street. So where I am coming from is that we need to provide a better level of service when it comes to our public facilities, because we supposedly are supposed to represent the ratepayers, the people that give us the money that we seem to be so frugal on spending, other than a toilet block at Table Cape. I think that we need to put our ratepayers first and provide them with decent facilities, and not use, we can't spend it because it's going to cost us money. Of course it's going to cost us money. And are the ratepayers they want some value for their dollar. One of our mantras that we champion is that we like to provide best bang for our buck at this council. And the ratepayers getting it when they use those toilets? I don't think so. I think we need to do something provide our ratepayers with a higher level of service when it comes to public facilities. So I'd like your support for the motion. Thank you.
I'll call for a vote. There'll be a division. I'll call for an indication of that. And those for the motion, section 1 of this 8.3, please indicate by showing your hand. Councillor Fairbrother. Councillor Bradley, would you like to do so? Okay. I just thought you was waving at me. Is there any, I thought you was waving to get me attention that you were. So no, Councillor Fairbrother was for the motion, is that, and the remainder against? Please indicate. Councillor Hyland, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Courtney, Councillor Bradley, Councillor Bramish, Deputy Mayor Daniam, and myself. The motion is lost.
Councillor Bremich, you give far too much information out, mate.
Councillor Fairbrother, section 2 of that. I guess there's no need to continue with that. Got that right, did I? 8.4, Councillor Training. Councillor Fairbrother has a notice of motion there. Would you like to formally move that?
No, Mayor, I don't.
You don't?
No, thank you. Councillor Bramage asked a similar question in the last council meeting. I was satisfied with the response that council staff provided for councillors. Thank you.
Withdraw that motion. Okay. 8.5, Councillor Fairbrother, notice of motion, parenting lounge. You want to go ahead with that one?
Yes, I do, Mayor. I'll move items 1 and 2 in the motion.
We have a seconder for that, please.
I'll second that motion.
Second to Councillor Courtney. Wish to speak, Councillor Fairbrother?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't profess to be an expert in the field, but I'm married to one that is. My wife is a midwife, and she deals with mothers. The feedback she gives me is that our municipality is in dire need of one of these type of facilities, and I recognise her level-headedness, an area of expertise, and the feedback that she gives me is that the feedback that she gets as she goes around and visits mothers is that our central business district needs one of these. At the moment, I understand that mothers who need to feed either frequent the library, the back seats of their cars, or wherever it's convenient for them to do it. And a dedicated area that is advertised, that could be a council building for the need, would be something that we could advertise and promote to attract people when they go and do their shopping. It would be something different, because I'm not aware of anywhere that there is such a facility, but I don't believe that we should be held back because other council areas don't provide a dedicated space. I think that it's good for us to be a point of difference, and this provides us with the opportunity to be that point of difference. Thank you.
Any further speakers to the motion? Question, Councillor Deputy Mayor Duniam.
Yep, thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you, Mr Mayor, if I could ask Councillor Fairbrother if he could clarify a couple of points. You wish to provide a parenting lounge, and it is a breastfeeding nook. Is that what you were referring to? Not just a feeding nook? Within close proximity of the CBD, is this Wynyard and Somerset, or just Wynyard?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Dunham. I referred to it as a feeding nook because other people may wish to take their children there to feed, whether they use the breast or whether they use a bottle, not for me to say, so I tried to be as neutral as possible and just use the word feeding nook. Yes, Somerset residents could travel to Wynyard to access the CBD. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fairbrother. We do have two CBDs, and that was the reason for the question. But the other one is, what do you envisage that this parenting lounge would provide?
You stuck?
No, I'm not stuck. I thought that I put it in my background information, but it must have been getting late. Preferably, I have it on advice that some people like microwaves, but microwaves, I believe, isn't a recommended method of feeding young children, because after you take the food out of the microwave process still heats the food, and you might go and touch it, think, oh, it's warm, go and do something else. A couple of minutes later, the food is actually increased in temperature. So if council passes this motion, there are other agencies or entities that perhaps could be better referred to than myself. Normally a sink, warm running water, those type of things, somewhere that was nice and private, perhaps. But equally, I'm not in the area of designating how these things will roll out. It's a policy thing for us as council to consider, and I believe that if it's passed, necessary organisations will be approached to find out what the best practice is in this particular area.
I think Councillor Hyland was next.
Yeah, I'll try another amendment, Mr Mayor. Point one is that council staff investigate access to a parenting lounge and feeding nook within the close proximity of the CBD of both Wynyard and Somerset.
Have a seconder for the amendment, please.
I'll second that, Mr Mayor.
Thanks,
Duniam.
Councillor Dunham. Now, I only just made one inquiry to try and get a little bit of information to see what is out there. Now, we have already got one of these, a room in Dixon's Pharmacy. It was started about 5 years ago to coincide with their baby club, with very little take-up. And that was 5 years ago, and from the recollections over there at the staff, they've probably had one or two people use it in the last 18 months. So the room is there, and that's what it's there for. They haven't gone out of late with a full-blown ad saying, come on in, but a chemist shop, you would thought that that sort of stuff would travel around pretty quick. But, yeah, so I'd put that amendment to the motion, Mr Mayor, and hopefully get a bit of support.
Any further speakers to the amendment?
Yes, Mr Mayor, if I could.
Yes,
Please.
Deputy Mayor Daniel.
Whichever way we look at it, it is a noble idea. But I guess in asking what this parenting lounge would provide, seating for mothers, etc., an area to change babies, access to tea and coffee, and Councillor Fairbrother did talk about microwaves. Will it be resourced by the Waratah-Wynyard Council? What may the potential cost be for the Waratah-Wynyard Council for establishment, if that's the way we go? And will there be an ongoing employment cost to run the facility? I just think that there's a lot of unanswered questions. They do need to be answered, but I do support the idea of having this parenting lounge or feeding nook. Thank you.
We're on the amendment, folks. We're on the amendment. The motion is stagnant at the moment, so we're on the amendment. Any speakers? Councillor Bradley. Oh,
Mr.
sorry. See you there, Councillor Fairbrother. You'll go, Councillor Bradley.
Mr Mayor, I think we should be looking at the creche over there. Perhaps they've got a room where the mothers can go in and feed, a spare room that, there'd be no cost. They just go in there and feed and change the baby's nappy. I mean, mothers are too busy nowadays to sit around and have cups of coffee, so they'd probably just want to feed and then go and change the nappy. So perhaps they might have a spare room that we could broadcast to everybody that perhaps go over there. Save us cost.
I think we're just on the amendment, though, at the moment.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's all right.
Someone else have their light on? Councillor Fairbrother was.
Yeah, Mayor, I just had mine on. I was searching for what is amended, but it's the word "and Somerset." Is that correct? Thank you.
You clear with the amendment, Councillor Ireland? Yep. All clear. Quite clear. Any further discussion on the amendment, folks? Councillor Bramish.
Well, I guess the only difference is it includes the word Somerset. Is that correct? Yeah. Well, I guess from the way I see it, and I don't know as much as a lady would know on this issue, but I guess how I see it is the chemist shop has got Wynyard covered. That's how I see it.
It's on the amendment, though. We're voting on the amendment.
Yeah,
so we have identified Wynyard and we can promote it, but that's part of the motion, not the amendment.
I was just getting to Somerset.
Sorry.
I guess there's probably 2 or 3 options in Somerset we can investigate. Is the new, what do we like to call it, down the new church? Community centre. Whether that's too far to walk from the town, I don't know. But I guess we can investigate what may be over there, whether there's any chemist shops there that might have a room. So, yeah, I'd support the amendment.
Okay. Any further speakers for the amendment? Appears not. Councillor Ireland, I don't think anyone spoke against the amendment. I'll put the motion as there has been no speakers against, save you replying, and need a division, I guess. Could you indicate those for the amendment, please? Yeah. Okay, unanimous. So, declare the amendment carried. Mr GM, now it becomes the motion. Okay, becomes the motion now. Okay, any further debate on it as a motion?
Mr Mayor, well, obviously, it is a good idea, and could end up with a good result. So staff investigate it. There is an opportunity of a free room over here to start with, and bring it back to a workshop, and let's have a look at it and see how we go. That would be the go, I would think.
Any further speakers? Councillor Edwards?
I just think it's a good thing for both Somerset and Wynyard, and I think, you know, you could make it quite unique for, you know, to bring people to Wynyard and Somerset and feel safe and comfortable bringing their children and know that there's a safe area for them to feed their children in some form.
Okay, any further? Councillor Courtney?
I just want to say thanks for bringing the motion forward, because I had no idea there was one in Wynyard. So the point to promote the area, promote the Nook. Well, there you go. I lived in the same street and I didn't know it was there. So, yeah, it's a good motion, because the promotion is not just identifying the room, but promoting that we actually do have one.
Okay, any further speakers? I guess we're fairly clear on what's where we're heading. You don't wish to close the debate, Councillor Hyland? Yeah. No worries. Okay, I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried unanimously. Okay, 9.1, the declaration of office. Recommendation that the council acknowledge the declaration of office made by Councillor Maureen Bradley.
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Dunyam. Councillor Bramish. Any speakers? I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. I needed to give you that opportunity. 9 point... Oh, did I? Oh, Councillor Bramish, sorry. Did you wish to speak, Councillor Bramish? Oh. All good. 9.2, Council Committee and Working Group Representatives. The recommendation there, appoint Councillor Maureen Bradley to the Australia Day Committee as outlined in the table below, and appoint Councillor Maureen Bradley to the Boat Harbour Beach Master Plan Working Group, and note the appointment of Deputy Mayor Dunyam as Cradle Coast Authority representative.
So moved, Mayor.
Okay.
I'll second it, Mr Mayor.
You all knew about it, I was just giving you a reminder. Deputy Mayor Dunyam seconded. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say... Did you wish to... Carried. Councillor Bramish worried me there. He had his light on. I thought he was going to speak. Beg pardon?
Just trying to get in first.
Okay, we're travelling well. Okay, 9.3. Council update on the COVID-19. That the council note the action being taken in relation to the pandemic.
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Dunyam. Councillor Courtney.
Could I just make a comment, please, Mr Mayor? It's already been brought up, but we do have another COVID-19 situation in Tasmania today, so I guess that this is a working document. It will change if that whole situation changes.
Yep. On the recommendation of our Chief of Health Department. Yep. You're so right. Okay, I hope we don't suffer like the other states. Okay, any further speakers? No, I'll put them up.
Yeah, I wish to speak to the motion if I can. Out of this COVID-19 pandemic, it was flagged a couple of workshops ago about, out of COVID-19, what do we want the new normal to look like? That to me is a question that hasn't left the forefront of my mind. I believe as a council it already unfortunately has changed the dynamics of how we do business at council. You only have to look around the table and I'm sitting amongst strangers, people that were on the dark side of the table, which I welcome them to this side. It's good to have some support around this side of the table. However, it does raise the issue, as a council, what do we want the new normal to look like? I think that we should be taking the opportunity of COVID-19 to again address this issue at a workshop. What is the new normal that we want for our community? I know that I've been, as I alluded to earlier, challenged about, well, what are we here for at council? In response to that, I guess I come up with perhaps too many questions and notices of motion tonight, but isn't that what we're here for? It was raised during the week in English media about how many notices of motion have we done since we've been about, and I guess I was flabbergasted by the lack of notice of motion that we have brought to the table. It doesn't matter whether they're approved or whether they're rejected. I think it's always good to have the debate to try and promote things in the community that might benefit the ratepayer. And because I believe that that is what we are about. And COVID-19 has given us an opportunity to stop, reflect, reevaluate where we're going. And I think that that is something good for us as a council to do looking forward. And yes, we have a budget which we need to be ever so mindful of. We work in an environment whereby funds for those people that we represent are about as tight as they ever have been. So we need to operate in a new environment, and somehow or other we've got to find the best value possible for our constituents. And Mr. General Manager, if you can have it as a constant part of our workshops about, well, what are we taking out of this COVID-19 experience? What is the new normal? And repeatedly ask us to perhaps think outside the square and have what we've been doing here tonight, throwing about various ideas and questions, because I think that we need to make use of the time that we have in the role that we're doing. And for me, a constant reminder would be welcome about, well, what are your thoughts lately, councillors? Because this is the first time we've had an opportunity since we've broke for our teams environment, which I guess I've stated before, and former Councillor House stated that the team's environment just wasn't conducive to good decision making. I'd much prefer this and the workshop face to face. I know that COVID-19 for me has disadvantaged me as an elected member. Not only did it take 3 to 4 weeks to get the new Teams process, once I got it, my systems were upgraded and I lost 80% of my access to my database of all the information when I want to go to my iPad. I used to just have a library there I've been a councillor for 20 or more years, and I had a significant database there of old agendas, documentation, and COVID-19 come along. I got upgraded to the new system and all of that just went out the window. And it's like, well, this isn't good. I went to the website, which is usually my default backup, and we've got a new website that doesn't have as much information as the old one. And it's like, oh, yeah, it's almost as though you've been brought back to the pack, which, yeah, is neither here nor there, I suppose, but it makes you less effective as a councillor, I find. And to me, it's been disappointing that we've had to go through this new process, but I understand that we have to do these things to keep ourselves safe, but it hasn't been enjoyable, and who knows what's around the corner. And I guess in the process, we've lost one councillor and gained another one. And I wonder what impact this COVID-19 had on the decision of the previous councillor. Only perhaps time might tell. So I support the motion.
Okay, the council note action being taken in relation to the virus pandemic, COVID pandemic. Okay, any further speakers? No further speakers. We're noting this, and I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. 9.4, the adoption of the Rural Road Safety Audit. A recommendation there, councillors?
Move motion.
Councillor Courtney.
Second, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Hyland. Any discussion?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I just want to commend your work on this, Mr Summers, and your department. I think this is, really good work, and councils at best practice should be doing these sorts of road safety audits. And I think the work that you guys have put into this is really commendable, and the report's a really good report. Even Luddites like myself can understand what you're saying in it. So, yeah, good job, and I support the motion.
Councillor Courtney, any further speakers? You speak, Councillor Fairbrother? Oh, Councillor Hyland.
Oh, sorry.
You're right. Councillor Fairbrother.
During the workshop on this issue, I did raise a couple of issues about north and south of Boat Harbour. Was that looked into? I haven't had an opportunity to look.
Mr Summers, do you have anything to throw light on that?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, look, I think, like we talked about in the workshop, I think the notation north-south probably wasn't best to describe. I think the road in that location actually probably runs more west-northwest, east-southeast, and it's probably referring to the uphill portion of Port Road rather than the downhill where guardrail already exists. So, yeah.
Thank you. Any further speakers before I put the motion? I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. 9.5 is the speed limit reduction on Calder Road.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Bramish.
I'd like to flag that I want to move an amendment to this motion. Can you give me that authority to do it now, or have I got to wait till this motion's put, or what?
An amendment or an alternate motion?
Or an alternative motion, whatever you want to call it.
Through Mr Mayor, you can simply move the motion as you see fit, Councillor Bramish, if you'd like to amend some of the wording there.
An alternate motion.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to move the motion as it sits with the deletion of Ballast Pit Road and put Pages Road.
Okay, we're all clear on that? From the existing rail corridor to the intersection of Calder Road and Ballast Pit Pages Road, deleting Ballast Pit Road.
Yeah, so it goes past there and finishes at
Pages Road. Pages Road Junction. Okay. Yeah, second for Councillor Bramish's
I'll second
alteration.
that. I'll second that. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Any you wish to speak again?
Look, I will run the ideas. I guess you've heard them all other night, but I guess I'm going to bore you with them all again. I guess we're talking about road safety. It's got to go to Pages Road. I'll indicate why. You go up the road a little bit from Ballast Pit Road, you've got Summers' earth moving, coming in and out of a quarry there. You've got a concrete plant there that's probably got up to 50 movements a day. You go a little bit further, you've got Beswick's Road, which logs are coming out of. You go a little bit further, you've got a quarry, sand quarry, which we approved here a few months ago for expansion. That's getting busier. And a few metres up the road, you've got Pages Road, which a lot of heavy traffic comes through. All in the space of about 1 kilometre from Ballast Pit Road. So I just think if we want to talk safety and get real, I can't understand why we don't take it to Pages Road. For that reason, that's why I'm urging councillors to extend it. Maybe the sign should go a little bit past Pages Road so they slow down to 80 kilometres when they get to Pages Road.
Okay. I understand your motion, Councillor Bramish.
Thank you. I'd like to hear some support from the other guys.
Any further speakers to the motion? No further speakers. You wish to speak, Councillor Hyland?
Yeah, well, I did make a big speech the other night, but someone switched my microphone off and I was talking to myself. And I don't think you actually heard what I said.
I've done that.
For the benefit of those that didn't know you're on mute.
And actually, I sort of was nominating some of the things that Councillor Bramish just identified, but there is a but there. But I think, I don't know, we need to be just a little bit conscious of slowing the speed down on a great, well, what does it be, 3Ks, 4Ks? It's a fair stretch of road.
3 at the most.
And the fact that I'm not real sure whether we should have done a letter drop and got a view, or whether we just, are we going to get shot in the neck for this, or whether we should have done that or not, I'd be guided by a bit of advice from the top table, or whether it's a decision we just deal with.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it certainly, as the report indicates, no community consultation has been undertaken. There's certainly been numerous requests or complaints submitted to council about the speed limit and urging council to do something in this space. And as the motion reads, there isn't an intent to do any broader consultation based on that motion before you.
No. Oh, well, on that basis, I'd support the motion that Councillor Bramage has put forward, and given all those reasons with all those trucks, and that log industry is not going to get any lighter on for vehicles accessing that road, and it's not a real good area right on that intersection where the log trucks and the concrete trucks come out as well. And then you've got all the gravel trucks coming down anyway from the pit further up the road, so I'd support the motion as it is.
It is to seek approval from the Commissioner of Transport.
Yep.
So it is to seek his... Okay, Councillor Bramage. Any further speakers? You were going to close the debate, Councillor Bramage, were you? Before you do, or before you do, is there any other speakers? No. Councillor Fairbrother?
I'll be devil's advocate and just question Pages Road versus Ballast Pit is the question. I don't travel on the road on a regular basis like my learned colleague here. I don't know whether he still lives up Calder Way. He should be fairly well across road conditions, and I recognise Councillor Bramage frequents the area on a regular basis. It's just when I look at the lay of the land, you come round the corner at the top of the hill and you come down to Ballast Pit. I'd be interested to know what sort of speeds you'd get to by the time you get to Ballast Pit. Coming around the corner, you're coming down a hill, you're coming down, just trying to envisage, you come down past Council Island's place, you're probably sitting on 100, you've got to pull up and then you've got to brake all the way down to Ballast Pit Road. No, you've got to pull up pretty quick before Pages Road and you're coming downhill, and then you go downhill all the way. So I'm just trying to think on my feet. I don't know that. What sort of feedback does the Commissioner of Transport give? Does he sort of say, no, that's too far away? Is there any criteria? I'm just thinking out loud. I don't necessarily object to Pages Road. It's just that it's not conditions that I am familiar with. So I don't know whether we're opening a mouth too wide and biting a bit more than what we can chew, or whether Pages Road is appropriate. I don't know.
Yeah. When you finish, I'd just like to have my 2 bobs worth in this. Very often I use Ballast Pit Road, quite often, and I don't know how many times I've had someone come up behind me so quickly out of the dip from in front of a little bit south of the road there where the big dip is. You cannot see them coming out of that gully before Dean Viney's, and you don't know they're there, and you think it's all clear, and they're in the gully, and you're out in the road. Next thing they're right on your clacker. It's a worry. If this hadn't come forward before, I was going to suggest it myself, but no, I have experienced some near misses there, and I know a lot of the residents, and we've got a lot of residents in Ballast Pit Road. I reckon we'd have 40 homes in Ballast Pit Road, and it's a pretty busy little road, and they themselves, I know there's some elderly people in there, retired people, Mrs. Cropper and Mrs. Walker and a few of those people, and they've flagged it with me that, it's not good. Anyway, Councillor Bramage, Councillor Edwards, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, I'm happy to support it to Ballast Pit Road or just a little bit beyond that. But, coming around from Pages Road, and if it's trucks and that, then they'd be going to pretty close to the 80 anyway, coming from there. So their traffic speed would be around 80, and then going down towards Ballast Pit, they would be starting to get up towards, 80 to 90. But then if they know that it's an 80, then it'll stay at 80 anyway. My thoughts anyway.
Any further speakers? I ask you to close the debate, Councillor Bramish. There's been one speaker against.
Thank you. If I can raise the issue about trucks doing 80 down there, that's not really the issue that I've got. It's the trucks that's pulling out, loaded from Summers' earth moving, the concrete plant, Beswick's Road, Rouse Gravel Pit and Pages Road that's loaded. That's doing 3 or 4 kilometres an hour for a period of time so they gradually build up speed. And the cars that's coming up behind them, that's what I want to try and slow down. Don't want to slow the trucks down because they're not getting over speed. Trying to slow the traffic down that's coming in behind these heavy vehicles. That's what the motion is designed for. The trucks won't get over the speed, and you can't do much more than 80 kilometres an hour on that road anyhow. You got the corner near Summers' earth moving, the concrete plant there. I don't know how many accidents there's been on that corner with cars on frosty mornings. So look, I just urge for us, look, if we're going to talk safety, let's talk it and let's do it. But I'm surprised that it didn't go the next step from Ballast Pit Road up to Pages Road. But I think for that 1 kilometre, that's all it would be. With all them outlets on that road, we'd be foolish if we didn't do it. Thank you.
Okay, the debate is closed. I'll put the motion of their division. I'll ask for a show of hands. Those in favour, please indicate. Councillor Hyland, Councillor Fairbrother, Councillor Courtney, Councillor Bradley, Councillor Bramish, and Deputy Mayor Dunyam, and myself. Those against, Councillor Edwards. Okay, I declare the motion carried. Okay, we move on to 9.6, the Myla Community Centre Incorporated request for assistance.
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Dunyam moved.
Second, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Hyland seconded. Any debate? I'll put the motion. I don't want to rush anyone, but we can move on. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Okay, 9.7, the quarterly statistics report to the 30th of June. A recommendation there that the council note the quarterly statistics.
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Dunyam. Councillor Hyland. Any questions? Any speakers? I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. .8, the annual plan, the final report. The recommendation that council note the 1920 annual plan report to the 30th of June 2020.
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Dunyam. Councillor Courtney. Any questions? Any speakers? I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. 9.9, the annual report of the Waratah-Wynyard Audit Panel Committee.
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Dunyam.
I'll second the motion. I'd just like to flag, I don't want to make an amendment, but when we're looking at asset management, I'm going to bring us back to that coastal erosion report.
Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. You wish to speak, Councillor Courtney? Or do you wish to open the debate, Deputy Mayor Dunyam?
Not necessarily open the debate, but I just wanted to make a comment that the audit report does actually indicate how well our council is working. It does indicate what we have had to amend to improve our operations, all of those things, and to be told tonight that we're only doing a good job if we post motions per meeting, and that's what we'll be judged on. I find that rather strange, considering that there is a lot more to being a councillor than just putting motions forward. I do think that this audit panel report is great in what it tells us what's happened, what has been changed, what we've actually amended to improve our operations and what we do for our community. So I commend it to the council.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Duniam. Councillor Courtney, you wish to speak? Question? Pardon? Oh, fair enough. Thank you. Any further speakers before I put the motion? I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. 9.10, meaning 10, that the council adopt the asset management policy.
So move, Mr Mayor.
Deputy Mayor, Councillor Hyland seconded. Any speakers? No speakers? I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Agenda item 9.11, the financial report for the period ended the 30th of June 2020.
So move, Mr Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Duniam. Councillor Courtney.
Could I just make a comment, please, Mr Mayor? It is a very thorough report. Again, thank you, Mrs Searle. I do note that there are some red dots on some of those reports, but the commentary provided does indicate how these issues are being dealt with, and I'm sure that COVID-19 has impacted on our financial report. So I thank you for giving us that full report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Duniam. Any further speakers? Councillor Bramish.
Got a question, if I may. It's right at the last page, and it's the Mount X roundabout.
$5.
Well, 5%, is it? What would that mean?
Through you, Mr Mayor, there was some funds put in the operational budget, if I can bring this one up, to look at what can be done from the point of view to tidy up the Mount X roundabout. I know that's been a point of conjecture for this council for some time. Now, that project was deferred. It was scheduled to occur, I guess, in the last quarter of the financial year, but again, with COVID, that was one that wasn't addressed, and it's certainly something that can be revisited at any time, but that's what that particular item was for, that there was some operational funding. So 5% indicates that there were some very preliminary studies undertaken, but not progressed to its full extent.
I think I said dollars, didn't I?
You did say
I
dollars,
said
but
dollars.
it means 5% was the what was completed.
But
I guess over the years, correct me if I'm wrong, that we have done some maintenance out there in mowing and got no funds from state growth for that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and I suppose that's probably still a process in place. I just wondered, you know, they're pretty slow getting back to us with roads, upgrades and potholes and conditions on the Bass Highway, whether we could sit them down somewhere and really find out what's going on with this roundabout, look at the condition of it, what can we do about it?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. I think that's certainly the intent of this particular project, to determine what council would like to see done with the roundabout, what level of service they would like to see, the appearance that they will require, and then put that to the state government to see if we can get some agreement on that matter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr GM. Any further speakers? Councillor Courtney.
No, just question if I might, Mr Mayor. On page 104, I noticed that it says HR management system and it's got 0% done. So I can understand the 0%. Can you just explain to me what the HR management system project is?
Through you, Mr Mayor, essentially a lot of our HR practices are done using very manual processes. Traditionally Word documents, spreadsheets, so forth. So the intent of this particular motion was to explore more modern computer systems, if you like, to back up the HR function. So that might mean, for example, online recruitment processes, or it might be a better databases to explore training, registrations, licenses, those sorts of things. So it was to explore and then potentially purchase a HR system. For the bulk of the financial year, we didn't have someone in our HR area, so we had someone who left. There was a long gap between replacements. So 0% indicates that that project was not progressed. We will carry forward that particular project as many of those items there that aren't completed, we will carry forward with the intent to complete that study now that position has been replaced.
Thank you, Mr. GM. Any further speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. Moved by Deputy Mayor Duniam, seconded Councillor Courtney. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. 9.12.12, Senior Management Report. That the Council note the monthly Senior Management Report.
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Duniam. Councillor Courtney.
Question, Mr Mayor.
Question from Councillor Highland.
Just as a dot point there, met with Friends of the Aldina Forest regarding the Aldina Coop. Is that sort of to do with the old picnic area, or is that different?
Through Mr. Mayor, no, that's different. There's the Aldina Reserve, which is the old picnic area. The Aldina Coop is, I guess, an area
one of those,
forestry land that's been earmarked for clearing.
Yep.
And certainly some of the residents there have some concerns with that, and they have a Friends of the Aldina Forest, I think that's what they're called, that came to meet and express their concerns. In fact, the Mayor and I have met that particular group a number of times now, and whilst work on that particular coop was due to take place, or clearing was due to take place a couple of months ago, that has now been, I guess, deferred, so they do have a little more time to present and prepare their case, and that's certainly what they're doing.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Any further, Deputy Mayor Duniam?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Just to note that the local government or Legat general meeting is on the 4th of December, and we probably need to consider motions that we want to present. Would that be right, Mr General Manager?
Through Mr. Yes, you can certainly explore motions for any of the Legat meetings, and that being one of them. Yep. The AGM and next general meeting of Legat is this Wednesday. Wednesday, Thursday? Yeah, Wednesday. This week.
Okay. Any further speakers? I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Matters proposed for consideration in a closed meeting. There's a recommendation that the Council resolves by an absolute majority that the matters listed below be considered in the closed meeting. Would I have a motion for that, please?
So moved. Seconded then. Yep.
Councillor Bramish. Moved. Seconded Councillor Highland. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. And the recommendation that the Council resolves by an absolute majority to go into a closed meeting to consider the following matters. Deputy Mayor Duniam. Councillor Bramish. The time being 8:15. Put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Okay. Off you go.